Hi guys, and welcome to my YouTube. So today I'm going to talk you through the process of painting this pendant. To start this pendant, I'm going to start with doing a plus symbol, and what this does is it helps me line everything up and kind of get it symmetrical. Then I'm going to go into the space between and place another dot. And I'm using the small end of the dotting tool here. And then for the next row, I'm going to use a slightly bigger tool, and I'm just going to place a dot in between the dots of the previous row. And if you see, I'm switching, doing every other dot. The reason I do that is that helps with symmetry as well. You tend to pull to one side or the other. So doing every other one, it helps you keep it more symmetrical. Next, I'm going to use an even larger tool to do a big blue dot, and I ended up dipping both of these big dots twice. So I just get more paint and load it back up, but I don't push the tool all the way down the second time. And that's how I get those big plumpy dots. So I'm going to do this with all of the dots going around, and I'm making these really large because these are the ones that I am going to walk the dots on. So I usually work on several projects at once. So after I did these dots, I took a break and I came back, and so my paint is dry now. And you can see how plumpy those blue dots are, and that's just because I added extra paint to them. But you want to do that while it's still wet. You can also wait till it dries and then redot over them, but it just is cleaner if you do it while it's still wet. I decided to go in with blue dots in between all these little spaces, just because I know I'm going to do some yellow walking the dots, and I figured I should bring the blue in towards the center. So for walking the dots, I am using this pink dotting tool. I'm using the big end to do the big dot, going all the way around. And then I ended up changing my mind, and I decided to use an even smaller tool to do the dots walking around. I'm going to put a link down below to like my Amazon list of tools that I used. I just found this tool and I absolutely love it for tiny dots. It's just like a regular dotting tool, but the tip of it is so small. It's absolutely wonderful to use. This part is called walking the dots, and I absolutely love walking the dots. It's my favorite thing to do, so a lot of my designs just has a ton of walking the dots in it. And in order to do this, I'm just dipping my tool into the paint once, and as I work my way around the bigger circle, the dots just gradually get smaller as I go around. Now, since I'm working with yellow, I have to be careful and make sure my paint doesn't get too thin at the end. I am using Liquitex heavy body paint, and this particular paint is really good even with yellow dots, that the black doesn't bleed through once it dries. It's very opaque paint, and I really like this brand for my yellows, oranges, and reds. One thing to keep in mind is when you're walking the dots, don't worry about how many dots I'm placing around the side. You just do however many you can fit that looks right for your piece. Your spacing may be larger, smaller, and you may be able to fit more or less dots than what I'm doing, so just do whatever works for you. Next, I decided to do some swipes, so I just used a dotting tool to make a dot, and then I used this other tool. It's different from the one I was using earlier. This one actually has a needle on the end of it, and I'm just using that to just pull that paint up to make a little swipe. I find this way to be the easiest to do when you have a really tight spot, which I do here on this little bitty pendant. And if you're trying to get a really sharp line tail at the end, I just find using the needle to be the easiest way. So I also will re-dip into paint and add more paint to it just to make sure that I have enough paint going all the way down to the tail. And I'm actually chose blue here for a reason, because if you look at my yellow dots, some of the areas I have more space than others. So by using blue, it kind of hides that. It visually takes that space away from you. If I were to do yellow going down, which is what I was originally going to do, it would have made it really obvious, the gaps between the sides. So that's a little trick that I use sometimes. Sometimes my color choice is to actually help hide where the spacing may be a little off. So I thought I would just throw that in for you guys. For this yellow part, I am doing the same thing as before, but I'm only dragging the dot out on one side, and that's what's giving it that little rounded look at the top with a little tail coming down. With the yellow, I'm being extra careful, adding more paint, because I want to make sure that those tails, as the paint's thinner there, I want to make sure I have enough paint in those tails that once they dry, you're not going to be able to see the black underneath. If your paint dries and you realize that the tails were too thin, you can always go back and add more. When I have to do that, I usually end up just going over the entire swipe though, not just one section, so that it has an even look to it. So for the top dots, I decided to do yellow. And on these, I am not letting the tool touch all the way. And if you notice, I'm kind of bringing the tool up towards the center before I lift it up. And that is because these are kind of dome shape. And I'm bringing that peak to the top so that when it settles, it will settle in the middle and not make a teardrop shape. So at this point, I debated if it was done or not. So I kind of sat on it for a little while. And then I decided that I really did want to go back in and add a little bit more yellow to this outside. So what I ended up doing is just placing a dot on top of the blue swipe and then just kind of made like a little highlight swipe on top of the blue swipe. So you can still see the blue all the way around, but it just has like a little touch of yellow, and it kind of helps frame the piece, and I think it just kind of brought it all together. And here's the finished piece. If you like this video and want to see more or have any questions, please leave a comment down below and be sure to subscribe to my channel. I also wanted to show you the sides and how the bumps are raised even after they are dry. And yeah, so if you enjoy this video, please subscribe, and I hope to see you guys soon. Bye.